session. This is the attraction and retention of hyper-digital, IP-enabled millenniums and Generation Z. We have to blame, I think, Scott for putting in the hyper-digital, IP-enabled. It sounded pretty sexy, so we put it in there. But the message is that we, as an industry, the building automation industry, we need to attract these younger people. And the younger people are now Generation Z, and they're coming to us, and they are born connected, and we have to start thinking about being born again connected, which is the theme of automated buildings. And for you that don't know me, I'm Ken Sinclair. I'm the owner, founder of Automated Buildings. Automated Buildings is an online magazine. I just called it a scrapbook, an online scrapbook of the industry for the last 21 years, which is all searchable and stuff, and it's a collection of articles and interviews and basic industry opinion that we've accumulated. And every day it gets harder and harder for me to decide what fits in automated buildings. As we move into the IT world, we touch everything and everything touches us, so it's a growing field. Some of this stuff is pretty lumpy for us to put in our scrapbook, but it's the direction we're heading, so we have to kind of keep on moving that. In opening session this morning, we talked about our education emergency and the fact that we all have to learn so much so fast that we're right in the midst of an education emergency. I think helping us is getting younger folks into our industry. They bring with them a whole new perspective, and they just simply want to go ahead and do this. They actually see our task being done quite differently than we do, which is useful information for our companies. It helps us reinvent, helps us become agile, all these things we have to do as we all turn into software companies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the floor over to Scott to start with, and Scott from Cochrane Supply and Engineering, and Brad White from SES Consulting. So these two folks, their daily job is they have to find and retain these folks to keep their innovative companies going. So I'll have Scott speak to that and just more or less tell you what he does on a day-to-day basis to make this happen.
Scott. Hi, everybody. My name's Scott Cochrane. I'm with Cochrane Supply and Engineering. We're a building controls distributor based in the Midwest, and we sell building automation primarily to systems integrators and mechanical, electrical contractors. I'm I'm second generation. So I am, what am I? Well, I forget, what am I? Generation X? I was a Gen X. So let's talk about that transition. So Cochrane Supply started, my dad worked at Honeywell, and when Honeywell decided to start selling controls to independent contractors, my dad left and started distributing Honeywell controls to contractors. This is in 1967. Those controls he sold were either burner controls or pneumatic controls, okay? And he was successful doing that for 20 some odd years. Me, I was just a punk kid, normal kid, just kind of like grew up in the, I went to school a lot in the 80s, and we were the first generation to have an Apple IIe in our elementary schools, our middle schools. So we were actually, my generation was the first generation to use computers, in reality. And so now my dad's been running this business for, 20 plus, almost 30 years. I come into the business, and when I came in with a completely different vision than what he had and what he had been successful with. So he had built, success based on good mechanics, good engineering, good comfort, good safety, energy management. He built the business on that. Now I came in and I'm like, well, that's all nice, but you got to put a computer on this, Dad. And so as I came in, I was the one who convinced my dad to put an IT infrastructure, like get away from terminals and actually put in computers with email and put in an IT network and hook it all up. And it changed the business. And then within 3 years of me bringing this technology thoughts to both the company and the industry, or the business, hell, they gave me the company to run. I was 27. Oops, that don't ever give a company to a 27-year-old. But I did survive the early years, which were ugly. But long story short, going back to this, I was, to my dad, I was like this completely different animal. But the one thing that he did to the company and did for me was we have, and we still do have, a culture of looking at the different generations and allowing them to succeed in the ways that they can succeed. So we are an old industry. We like to jam things down people's throats as an industry. We do not like change as an industry. So now every kid that's coming out of college lives in a change management universe. They thrive on change. We're living in a universe where if I say something stupid in a meeting, the 26-year-old sales rep corrects me because she pulls up Google and is like, dude, that's not what that means. You're wrong. And they know more than me. They know more than me. They can get to information so fast it makes your head spin. And I don't even have my phone out of my pocket and they've typed 100 words into it, right? Or they're just, like my little one, she just talks to it. So you got to ask yourself, whatever your position is in your company, how are you going to allow that next group to come in and change your company or your role or your profession, or depending on how you look at this? Because like my dad did, he simply accepted the change, and that's how we evolved. And a lot of this is really going to be about how do we accept the change of, a line of kids walking in for an interview that are looking at, they don't even look at the door, they're staring at their phones. That's a fundamental change in how we can't just say, put your phone down and look me in the eyes. No, we got to Snapchat them. Hey, ready for your interview? So we as the people that are now at that next generation, how do we look at that? So, all right, so that's my little story I thought I'd share. I'll turn it over to Brad and let him tell his.
Okay, so SES Consulting, which is my company, is we're about a 25, 30 person consulting company up in Vancouver, and I guess I mean in one sense we are a multi-generational company that was originally Ken's company way back in the day, but there was no people other than Ken involved, and so I think when we actually started adding people, we've really only ever hired millennials. I think we've got a couple of people who are on the younger end of the Gen X spectrum, but the entire company from the ground up has been millennials from day one, which is interesting because I think it's driven us to do a lot of things that other companies don't do and do things differently. For example, right from the get-go, we made a decision, the staff is entirely professional, but we still pay everyone hourly. We don't have anyone on salary, including myself, including the CEO, because we realize people like the flexibility. They want to be able to go off and go skiing on Friday or take a vacation whenever, and the policy's been like, all right, great. I mean, we're going to pay you for the hours you work, and we don't want to mess around trying to keep organized on how much time you have banked and vacation time and all that. Forget it. We're just going to pay everyone straight hourly. And I won't say that's worked for everyone, but the vast majority of our staff, and especially the ones that have stayed with us long term, that works really well for them. Especially some of the people with young families, both men and women who work for us, myself included. And my kids don't sleep well at night. I kind of like not being obligated to have to be in the office for 8:30. If I need to catch up on my sleep a little bit, I feel like I can do that. We're flexible, letting people work a couple days a week if they want. I mean, we're probably flexible to a fault, and certainly it creates problems on the other end managing it. But I'd rather I'd rather deal with those problems than say to my staff, no, you got to be here for this many hours, and just have people that you can trust to get their work done, when they're working. We've got other staff that have, they decide upon themselves, oh, I want to relocate. I'm going to move 2 hours away, and I'm only going to come into the office once a week now instead of every day. And you know what? We said, you're a good enough employee. That's fine. We'll make sure we've got the infrastructure in place to handle the remote work. Make sure your client relationships don't suffer, and it's all good. So it's just things like that from the get-go. And I think the other challenge though we've had is hiring millennials and continuing to hire people without any experience. We've had to pay a lot of attention to how we train and how people learn, and put a lot of emphasis on setting up infrastructure to allow our staff to learn from each other, because we don't have a lot of people sitting around with experience that they can mentor. So interestingly, they kind of have to mentor each other as they learn together, and that's been an interesting challenge to run with as well. All in all, I mean, it's worked out pretty well for us, and I think, but it's certainly, when I look at some of our competitors and some colleagues at other firms, it's, we've really, I think, put a focus on doing things differently. And I think it just, and at the core of it, we hire people who kind of care about our mission. We're a company that focuses on energy efficiency, greenhouse gas reductions. That is our mission as a business. And first and foremost, we hire other people who believe in that mission. We primarily do mechanical engineering, but I've hired electrical engineers, chemical engineers, people with architecture backgrounds. That we care more about how they feel about our mission than the skills they have coming in, because we can teach them those. And as Scott pointed out, the skill set's changing so fast anyway. I think there's less and less value, quite frankly, in that long experience in a given area. I think there's more value in being flexible and adaptable, being a quick learner, being able to pick up something new. That has more value than having 20 years of experience with air handling units, for example. Not that experience doesn't have its place, but more and more I'm choosing the people who can, you can pick up coding, they can pick up network design, skills that they've never had to have in the past. But if you're a quick study on that sort of thing, that's worth a lot to us right now as we try to adapt to the changing industry.
Could you mention a little bit about your soft infrastructure? I'm not sure what you call it, but you have sort of like a wiki system that
like when you start, maybe just step us through starting as a new employee, which I did one day. Started as a new employee in the company, and it was a real mind-boggling experience.
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, and we've experimented with a lot of different interfaces over the years, how we share the data. But we've got a company wiki that everyone contributes knowledge to. We also rely heavily on, I think Google Groups is probably become our go-to more recently, even more so than the wiki. And it's almost like a company message board where everyone's just constantly sharing, hey, I've got this problem. Anybody else ever run into that? I went to this session yesterday and I learned this. I thought y'all would want to know about that. So that's probably the most lively and active part of our knowledge sharing right now. But for a new employee, we encourage them to look at the wiki. We've put a lot of effort into creating. We've kind of called it SES University, where we've actually created. Because the other problem with consulting is that we don't day to day we don't really know what kind of jobs we're going to have. It kind of depends. But we've learned that some jobs are better to learn on than others. So we've actually created a bunch of almost case studies or sort of fake projects that if we don't happen to have, for example, start doing energy audits is a great way to learn about building systems. Well, if we don't happen to be doing a lot of energy audits right now, we've actually got some case study audits that they can go through and kind of do a mock audit to get that experience without actually us having to have that job in place. Now, that gets expensive in terms of you having consultants do non-billable work on fake projects. So, we're conscious that, we can only do so much of that. But, there's a lot of valuable training there that you just can't get any other way if we don't have that kind of project. I'm not going to throw somebody on day one into a really complicated recommissioning project because, that time isn't going to be well spent either. So I'd rather they burn a bit of time learning how to do things properly than get into a job and start making mistakes and messing things up. So.
Maybe another comment might be is the ease at which you've been able to start satellite offices. I think that's what's been, with the flexible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks to Google for that. I mean, that's, adopting, everything we have is cloud-based because, we just early on adapted Google infrastructure. So, it's not, if somebody wants to move 2 hours away to, because they want to be closer to the ski hill, it's okay because, it's really no different other than, their physical presence. But, they can, all of our file sharing is all available through remote servers and VPN networks we've all got set up, and we rely heavily on Google Meet to do face-to-face meetings, and all that just seems easy. But I've seen other companies catching up to us recently in that. I know a lot of our competitors now offer remote work, and I don't think that's as big a deal as it used to be. I think more if you're not doing that, at least in the consulting business, where the vast majority of our work is not field-based. It's done in an office in front of a computer, and I think in that kind of environment, in this day and age, if you can't handle people working remote or working from home, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, do you want to? Sure, I'll add some of that.
Your business
I'll get
model
Brad.
is quite different.
Yeah, mine's a little different, so I'll kind of add to it. So, fix the slide here real quick. Oh. I feel like, was that just deja vu? That was deja vu. No. Okay, so Cochrane Supply. So we have multiple branches, multiple locations. We have we're 50 plus employees, and I would say the majority of our employees now are in their 30s or below. And that was a transition that took place over the last 4 or 5 years for us. So it was it was a big transition, and it wasn't easy. So there were a couple things in terms of recruiting these people that I found really important. The number one thing about recruiting today for our industry, and really any industry, it's all about social media. It's really all about social media. The young people today, they don't read the want ads. So posting a want ad, doesn't do anything. It's a social media world. There are services out there like Indeed now where you can post your positions online, but you still have to use social media to point people to that ad, okay? Because the kids today, again, they don't look at traditional media. They look at things in little bites. So in order to feed them that, social media seems to be the best venue. I don't know, how many of you have a LinkedIn profile? So we find LinkedIn is a very valuable way, social media way, to post professional requests for people and different services. So that's a great social media outlet. Facebook may be one. As a company, you put up a Facebook site, you announce the openings, things like that. So number one, I found social media is the key to reaching those people you're trying to attract to your company. Now, when they look at your company, what do they see? I mean, really, check out your website. How many of you have kids? So ask your kids if they think your website is cool or not, and take their feedback very seriously, because that's who you're trying to attract. And they have a different vision than we do of the companies that they want to work for. Now, I came from a generation which was all built, the 90s is success and drive and all that. That was the Gen X's. We're just worker generation, I guess. But the next generations, they don't want to work. I mean, they want to work, but they want to work differently. They want to work smarter, and they want to have, when they choose a company to come work for, typically they're trying to find a culture that matches their own. So they don't want to come in and try and work with this culture that's been there for 50 years, and we've succeeded for 50 years doing it this way. That's like the last place these kids want to come work at, okay? Because one of the other things that they're looking for is not only do they want to be a part of the team, but they want to make an impact. A lot of them want to make a social impact. So they're coming in with ideas about the climate, or they're coming in with ideas about safety or security, and those are good ideas. So instead, I'm going back to, how do you make your company look to these people? Does it look like someplace where your kids want to come work and develop themselves into an industry that's exciting and fast-paced? Or does it look like, I got to go back to grandpa's shop and go to work there? Because you're going to have a hard time recruiting young folks to come work for those companies, right? I think, though, the key to the whole thing, though, it's not just the look and that. It's really the real culture you build within. So here's the next layer that we uncovered as we've been recruiting, is that they not only look at the social media you post for the job, but once they're like, oh, that company seems interesting, then they go really social media your company. And they look at the events you host, and they look at the people and the comments they make, and they look at your Google star rating. They look at so many pieces of information about your company that you have no control over. It's difficult, right? So how do you build your company so that works? And what we believe in is culture. So not only do we talk a good game, but we live a good game. The people at Cochran Supply, we host events that are fun. And we post them on social media so people see that it's not just all about the job, it's about the culture. It's about the life experience you're going to have when you come to work at a place like Cochran Supply. And we do that by doing things that are out of the norm, things that are different, and then we post them on social media. So when people come to look for a company like Cochran Supply, they see like we had, how many views did we have when I went in the dunk tank? What do we have, like 1,000 views, like 1,000, what was that on YouTube? Like 1,000 YouTubes of me getting dunked in a dunk tank, okay? I mean, it was a promotion. I mean, it was for product promotion, but at the end of the day, it was really about a culture that has a little bit of an X factor to it, a little bit of fun. And so I really believe, right now, my strategy is still the same. We have an open culture that accepts young people. We look for new ideas all the time. We use social media as our primary means to get to them and advertise to them. But most importantly, we live a fun culture in the company that we broadcast through social media, which attracts more people to us. I mean, I'm proud to say my last 2 hires were people who came out of the industry to us and said, hey, I want to come work for you because you guys know what it's all about. I want to be a part of that team, right? They didn't know me. They didn't know the company, but they figured it out pretty quick, so. You want to comment or questions on that?
Yeah. Well, I think the recruiting thing is interesting, and one thing we've started to take a lot more seriously is diversity. And I think what we were starting to realize is that our staff was all starting to look kind of like each other after a while, and we were hiring the same kinds of people in terms of their background, whether it be socioeconomic, and everyone. Basically, we ended up with a bunch of 20 and 30-something-year-old dudes who like to ski. And we decided, that's not the company we want to be. So we, and we've got a really great HR person who kind of took it on herself to really do a lot of literature around unconscious bias and best practices around hiring. So, some of the things that we've done is that, now when we are reviewing resumes for a posting, we strip away all the identifying information. So there will be the people reviewing the resumes from that cannot get any indication of gender or racial background, or even age or anything like that. Really we try to make it so that they're judging the resumes strictly on the contents of the resume, and then really it's only at the interview stage when you meet someone face to face. So the idea being is that we're not unconsciously screening out people who maybe don't fit with the culture that we built, because it seemed like that's what we were doing even if we weren't intending on it. And I'll say, since we started doing that, our workforce did get much more diverse, and we've got some great hires that I don't know if we would have found otherwise. And so I think it was hard for me to get away from, because we always you go to lunch with someone and you're really impressed and you get off them the job, and that was how it went for a long time with us. And to get away from that and say, no, we're gonna be more rigorous. We're gonna implement kind of this multi-step process that quite frankly is a lot more work. But I'm really proud of the results, and I think it really paid off. And I couldn't imagine kind of going back to the way we used to do things with sort of handshake deals. And our staff is more diverse, and I think our company is now much stronger as a result of taking those steps. So it's something I would really be, and I was very skeptical when we first started. It's quite frankly seemed like too much work, but the results have spoken for themselves, and I would really recommend it to anyone to take a serious look at adopting those kinds of hiring practices.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brad. So diversity is key. In the last session, we just had Therese Sullivan was up here with women from the HVAC industry and leadership positions. And one of the things that Therese brought up, and quite a few of them, is one of the things that they found as a woman in the industry is when they're involved and they're engaging and they can be a part of the team, what a lot of times they bring is balance to the organization. They bring diversity brings you, let me tell you something. One thing I've learned with running a business for 20 some odd years is that I am stupider today than I ever was. Why? Because every time I learn something, I'm like, oh crap, how did I not know that? And if you don't have people around you that will challenge your way of life, your opinion, and things like that, how are you ever going to advance or learn? And so getting those people into your company are really important. Another point I just wanted to make is I'm a proud father of 3 children. I have 2 girls and a boy. And I couldn't tell you which one of the 3 is geared best for our industry at this point. Because the kids today that we're raising, they don't see color, they don't see gender. I mean, they really don't. They are blind to it. And we are the only ones that can mess that up. I mean, because I believe they're exposed to so much information that all of the prejudices and all of the stupidity that go along with that kind of behavior, they break that down on Google within like year 3 of their lives. They see there's no difference between these people other than, the way they look and maybe where they live, right? So with that then, this generation coming out, every job we look at, I mean, it is not gender biased at all. It is not focused on any age group because why? Because the next generation, the best candidates, whoever the best candidate is. And I think a lot of people would agree with me. Anybody who has kids today who are involved in schools and whatnot, I think a lot of you probably see that today like I do. And I'm encouraged by that because, like I said, for us, it just means we can hire anybody, right? It means there's no limits to who you can bring in and have an impact on your company. And that, again, is another thing for you all to consider is if you don't have open hiring practices, you really need to reconsider that. So, please.
I just want to inject a little bit there, a concept called job crafting. It's an interesting idea where when you're sitting down with the employee in the interview stage, part of the interview and part of their test is how would you do this job?
Here's the job. How would you see this happening? And this is an amazing process. Again, it's from the totally connected or the born again connected folks. They just see doing it completely different. They can't imagine you're doing it the way you're doing it. Old databases, spreadsheets, like a spreadsheet. You got to be kidding. We're not going to use that. And so basically, the job crafting, allowing the person to basically identify their job and tell you how they're going to do it, is a very useful exercise. So, did you use that at all? Or?
I have actually. You brought up. That's a great point. So especially with these young people, we find job crafting in you bring in a young person and you learn their interests over a year or so, and you may have brought them into the marketing role or into an administrative role, and all of a sudden you learn that they're just geared towards sales or they're just geared towards, something different. And as an employer, it's really important to let these people communicate back to you what they want to do with your company or what they want to do with the role that you've given them. And that information, along, with this new line of thinking can really open up some possibilities for you, for sure, with bringing, especially, we're all in a staffing crunch. I don't know who's not in a staffing crunch. I think we all are. So especially with the staffing crunch, again, more options. So.
Okay, we always say that We're all in the software business now, we're all starting to look like software companies. And the idea of the agile management, Scrum Masters, so these kids are used to working through that. They've worked through projects in university. They're used to this thinking, and the whole room is open, and it's level, and everybody can come up with a good idea and blurt it out, and it can be part of the process. And so they're used to doing this, so they can actually suggest. The other thing is let them suggest other industries, other adjuncts to your job that should be doing, because it's amazing what they can see. Is we should really have an app that does this. You know, have you thought about that? What's an app? Or no, I hadn't even thought about that. And sometimes those are good ideas. If they're their pet project, they become the what's the word? Project owner. Pardon?
Project owner?
Project owner. Yeah, that's a word that I'd never heard about. Like when he introduces me to somebody, he's the blah blah project owner. But he's the guy in the whole company. That project belongs to that person. Ownership, connection, good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, along those lines, I mean, we just launched a whole separate software spin-off company that only came about because we had people who were interested in that. I mean, we're an engineering company, but we had some staff members, and we really wanted to push. They saw an area where they thought we could develop something, and we kind of gave them the leeway to go do that. And then eventually, one of my former employees is now CEO of this new software startup that we spun off. I think that's pretty cool, because that's going to give us a way to really expand our impact, if it's successful, and hopefully it will be. But I think you got to taking chances on things like that, and otherwise he would have walked away and gone and joined another company. But because we sort of created that opportunity for him, now we've got this whole new thing that didn't exist before.
Plus, that screams of your culture, I think. You talked about how important it was, the culture, projecting and basically just telling people what your culture is. And the big thing you want to tell them is our culture is unknown. It's evolving as we go. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way these kids roll now. They want to be free.
Great. So another topic just on this line is we put in the word, and I made Ken put it in, IP-enabled hyper-digital. So one of the other things to understand about where we're going, as this younger generation comes in and as our industry evolves, is we are moving into a time when every job in your company is going to require a computer science background. So really what's happening is no matter what you do, it's not just HVAC or building controls or that in general, but I mean, like every facet of what you do in your company now, when you look to hire a new person, one of the main assessments will be their enablement of their digital universe, whatever it is. I'll just give you a quick example. Cochrane Supply, we were considering hiring a new purchasing assistant. So the purchasing assistant was a paper pusher, okay? That was an assistant to the purchaser. They did the expediting, they do that kind of stuff, right? And we sat through countless meetings trying to justify this position and figure out how it would help us. And what we came back with was, we don't need a paper pusher anymore. We need a database management expert who's going to optimize the performance of our data so that our purchasing person can do their job that much better. And that's who we're looking for now. So this thing about the young people today is good news. They all come out with a digital perspective on life, and if they don't know it, they can learn it like that. So different than us, my generation, you gotta kind of find people my age that actually know like that IT stuff. But you can hire the young people like right out of high school, and you can just tell them to go home and learn all this IP stuff, and they'll come back an expert in like a week. I'm not saying they all will, but a lot of them have that capability. So as I mentioned, two things. Number one, every job in your companies is going to have a computer science part to it. And number two, these people, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they come pre-programmed that way. So there's a huge advantage of bringing them in now, in that they're going to bring that computer, digital side of your business, they're going to make that go so much faster for you, right? So I think it's an important thing to consider too. Would you guys agree?
The point I wanted to make is the data scientist is not just a solution though, because a data scientist thinks so completely different in the way he sees data being organized and pulled around, that he often has struggles with traditional management hierarchy, and they're used to working in a flat organization in a Scrum. Maybe you could comment a little bit more on that. Is basically, you got to look like a software company. You can't have somebody with 50 years experience and working with the data science. But the data science will be out the door within a couple of weeks. It's just, I'm immobilized inside of this thing. But basically it's an art, and I have no idea how to fix it unless they allow me to completely change what they're thinking. And so we've got some radical changes in data is a particular one. That's the one where I'm finding that the millennials are saying, you should see what these kids are thinking, because they grew up with completely different ways of manipulating data. Millennials, I think, grew up with spreadsheets, and the Generation Z doesn't know what a spreadsheet is. It's just data has to be free, and you have to be able, you organize your data the way you want to organize it in midair, and put it wherever you want. Maybe you can add some substance to all this.
Yeah, I mean, certainly your comments about hierarchy is, we realized early on that the folks we had in-house doing the software development didn't fit into our traditional team structure where you have a senior engineer reviewing the work of junior engineers. And, I mean, that's the way it has to be from a legal standpoint. When you're doing engineering, you've got to have a senior engineer who has so much experience and has a license, and they've got to sign off on everything. Well, the software side of our business looked totally different from day one, and that just, as Ken said, kind of a flat, they use the term holacracy, but there's different models where you just, you don't have that same hierarchical relationship. You have more of a kind of everyone's in charge and no one's in charge. Holacracy. Whole, yeah.
But a double.
Yes.
Holacracy.
Yeah. Not a whole.
Yeah. Yeah. When it doesn't work, that's what it is.
Exactly.
When it works, it's okay.
So, we just had to do that, and that was fine. I mean, that wasn't a big stretch for us. I mean, we were so locked into hierarchy that we couldn't adapt to that. But yeah, it definitely is a whole different world. And I think, the people who come in with the background in computer science and data science, they weren't fixed on spreadsheets the same way the engineers were. Because I think engineers, just the training you get in school is still, I think, a little more rigid. It's getting better. I think probably the newer engineers have a lot more capability to bring in some of these newer tools. But they were from day one abandoning spreadsheets, pushing us online to use stuff like Google Data Studio and just other tools that are totally different from the Microsoft Office suite that everyone else in the company used, and able to do amazing things.
What's the difference between a Scrum Master and a manager, a project manager? Yeah. Maybe describe that.
No, I probably can't. I mean, Scrum is a philosophy for managing projects, right? And so a Scrum Master is a manager, just but for that kind of environment, Scrum environment, and that's and it's much less rigid than a traditional project manager that's doing waterfall style project management, with doing Gantt charts and all. That's classic project management. While Scrum and Agile are totally different philosophies for project management. It's still project management though. And I think in the future, and what we're trying to find in projects is not one of those is better than the other inherently. They just have different applications. And you don't want to manage a project waterfall style when Agile is better suited to it, and vice versa. There's lots of projects that construction project, I'm not going to use Agile. You want more of a classic project management structure because Agile is not going to work when you're dealing with contractors and construction managers and consultants, and it doesn't work. But it works great if you're trying to build a new product or a new tool.
Did you see a question back there?
I wanted to ask a couple of questions in the same question.
Can you speak as
native thing, and how we, through the generations, changed. But historically, we have kind of two kinds of humans. We have internally motivated humans and externally motivated humans. And that's really the two, if you will, the spectrum on that. So I'm wondering, in this kind of environment, how are you experiencing those people who have internal locus of control compared to external, and what's your turnover rate when people find that that's not just what they like?
Well, that's kind of profound. I'm not sure I fully understand the question in terms of the different types of people, but sure, yeah, that'd be great, because I'm a little fuzzy on what you mean by that.
When I think about all of the projects that we ask folks to do, there's some people who are basically, they're the farmers. They'll put everything in place and they're motivated to do that. And there's other people that actually have to be motivated by other people
Yes.
in order to deal with that.
Gotcha,
So
gotcha.
you have a consulting culture you identified. Those are internally motivated humans, right? There are people that they'll take it and it's my project, I own it, but they're often the people who are leading them, and sometimes you have to have people to do the work. And I'm just wondering, in your experience, who likes to work in your kind of culture and who doesn't? And do they choose to leave on their own, or do you have to make that decision?
Okay. So I think you need both, quite frankly, in any organization, because the challenge with people who are sometimes internally motivated and are, they constantly want to take ownership of things and change how things are done. It can be exhausting after a while when every time you embark on something new, somebody wants to change the way that it's done or take it in their own direction. So I think you need enough of those people to sort of drive innovation and keep things moving. But I think you also need those externally motivated people who can just be sort of told to work on something and work on it, because I don't think if you have none of those people, it takes a lot longer to get things done. It's been my experience. You may have the most innovative offering in the field, but if you don't have anyone willing to kind of put their nose down and kind of get it done, then it's of not much use to the client, even if it's innovation isn't inherently useful. It's only useful if it actually gets delivered. And in terms of turnover, generally, most, I would say it's a mix. I'd say we probably experience more people choosing to leave on their own. And even in our environment, often it's boredom. I hear it all the time. I don't want to do any more energy audits. I'm done with energy audits, which is a core piece of our business. And we try to keep it interesting for people and sort of involve them in different projects of different complexity. But there's always, at the end of the day, there's only so much of that work to go around. You can't give everyone necessarily the diversity of projects. So we have people that come, say a few years, learn what they want to learn, and they move on. Often they go to work for some of our best clients, or they'll work not so often our competitors. More, they sort of end up somewhere else, and that's fine. I don't begrudge them for that. And I think and that tends to be, I would say, the internally motivated people leave on their own, and some of the externally motivated people who maybe don't respond well enough to that external motivation, they get pushed out because they can't. It's funny, the warning sign for me in consulting has always been people stop billing all of the hours that they're working. And it's just consistently across the years has been a huge red flag that I've just learned, is that when people who are struggling in a consulting environment, they'll take the work home and they won't fill out their timesheets for it, because they'll say, no, I'm taking too long. I'm just going to work on this, kind of on my own time because I feel bad about how long it's taking. And that consistently is the number one warning sign that I'm going to have to ask that person to leave, usually within 6 months to a year, because that's just a red flag that they can't handle the consulting environment. They think they're doing us a favor by not billing all that time. But honestly, I'd rather somebody bill all that time. That then we can understand how long it's taking them, maybe make some interventions, help them learn. But I find as soon as people decide that they're going to start working on their own time, that's kind of the writing on the wall. which is I never would have known that before I started in this, but it's just experience. I haven't yet had one employee who's done that has lasted more than a year or so after they started doing that.
Yeah, to your question too, real quick, I think one of the interesting questions we all should ask ourselves is, what is the next generation? Are they internally focused or externally? I really think it's going to be like a hybrid of the two based on these kids. I mean, at one moment they want to knock it out of the park and get everything done that you want the way you want it, and then the next moment they want to criticize how they did it, and you're like, wait a minute, you're my worker, go back to work. No, we can do it better. It's like, I don't know if this next group has got that figured. I don't know where they're going to land. So I think it'll be interesting over the next couple years. So I saw another question. Yeah.
Traditional job titles and job descriptions don't seem to be drawing the talent that we're seeking today. Any suggestions on how to maybe reframe that to get that initial interest in the job?
Man, that's a toughie.
Let them define it.
Well, in terms of attracting them, I mean, it's
That could be an attraction, if you basically say, this is a task we need to fill, we
Haven't created a title yet. Let them create their own title. Draw them in early. That suggests a lot to me anyway.
agreed. If you can get them to come in, a lot of them let them self-title themselves, kind of job crafting. But to attract them, in terms of job titles, do you use anything in particular? Do we? Team? Go ahead, Kim.
I helped hire for Scott. One of the things that we do when writing resumes is make them readable. There's so many job postings. What's the job? I can't figure it out. You use too many buzzwords. You don't know what the job is. Make it easy to understand and make sure that it conveys what they'll do on a day-to-day basis. And another really good tip is include something at the bottom of the job posting about the company and why it's great. Because people in the millennial generation and Gen Z, like Scott mentioned before, they're going to research the company, but that's a little snippet to say, here's something great, here's the benefits we offer, and here is what you can expect when you interview with the company. And then they're going to go do their own research. But that they at least have an interest there. So I think it's not about what terms you can use, but it's about how easy it is for them to understand what their job will be.
Yeah, I think we try to we play down the details
Yeah.
of the job.
So
It's
it's
more about the kind of company, the sort of you obviously want to convey, is this an entry level position or looking for experience, but we don't spell out. And often we have people come into the interviews and they're like, what is this job actually?
Right.
You kind of get them in by saying, this is a great company, this is what we believe in, this is what we're trying to do, and yeah, it's a technical position for suitable for somebody with so many years of experience, but it's only once they come into the interview, and then you get to have that conversation with them about, okay, well, what will that day-to-day look like? And it becomes a conversation, not just us telling them, you're going to do this. They say, well, here's what we're looking for, and yeah, you get to have that interaction. And when you get a good rapport going with someone, usually that leads to a successful hiring.
Cool. Question? Down in the corner? Yep.
So along the same lines, HVAC and computer science have historically shown up together. So if you're looking for HVAC type of people, we know the industry organizations like AHR and actually all these organizations that are very focused and centralized to what we do. Are there computer science type of networking organizations that have a very similar type of following that we can find our way into when we're trying to find these individuals?
I have not seen anything where we're able, I shouldn't say that. We have, so we recruit IT individuals, and within that, that's like different industries. And we do recruit them differently than we recruit like the HVAC types. When you look at IT types, or when you're getting more of people that have an IT background, a lot of times it's net like anything. Unfortunately, a lot of networking is where we end up being, right? That's the number one way. And typically, they have so many different certifications and different groups within IT that we don't, there's not one we focus on. But the one thing that I found, which is really interesting, is we're working with like Ohio State University. And one of the things that they're doing is all of their engineering degrees now have a computer science portion of the major. So they're all coming out with the computer science training with the engineering training now. Not all, but a lot of like the college. So you mentioned, where do you go to look for these people? I think you go back to the universities, and I think you're going to find that a lot of them have already updated their curriculums to add computer science to the typical engineering. And those people are coming out with a lot better basis of education for the digital side of the business than we had before. You know, we Cochrane Supply, we've hired IT people to support the IT side of the business. And then we have like mechanical, electrical engineers to support that, and they're two different people. What we believe in the next couple years, these people are going to come out, they're going to turn into one person. They're going to be one. And the colleges, like I said, I think the major universities, a lot of them are already moving the programs that way. Don't ever forget, BAS, we're the last ones to the party. So like the process side and the like life safety and security, they have IT in their industries now. We're like the last one. So like I said, the typical education now is coming with a lot better computer science than it ever did. So.
Yeah, I think a data scientist also is a specialist that would be hired by a company. You wouldn't particularly, I would recommend you do not hire a data scientist unless you've got some pretty smart computer people in your organization, because he's going to take it to another level. And I think data science itself is becoming a science, and it's actually an industry. And what he'll do is connect you to an industry that basically all they do is manipulate data. They have no idea what the data is doing. They don't care whether it's HVAC data. So they just completely stay clear of that whole relationship. And I think that's exactly when you hire a data scientist, that's why you want. And I think Nicholas sent me a blog thing that this data scientist was talking about why he had left his company, and that's what is, like they don't understand data science. And I think that's a big problem, because we don't understand what data science. When you actually get your head around what these guys can do for you, it's kind of amazing. And it's just, let me manipulate your data. Don't confuse me with, don't tell me what it is. I don't care. I don't care what it is. It's just a pile of stuff, and I can move it from here, and I can sort it, and I can do anything you want with it. But I don't think they need to be part of our industry. They're specialists.
Yeah, I want to add one more point to this. I got a good story. Have a customer, longtime customer, contractor, whom has a son. The son was going to college at the time, studying computer science, wanted to create video games. So the dad and I are friends. He's telling me about his son. I says, well, does he have a summer internship? He says, no. Well, bring him on in here. I'll get him working with my IT guys, introduce him to the industry. Guy's like, great. The young man comes in. He works for us over the summer. He's phenomenal. All the IT guys love him. He eats the stuff like candy. Goes back to college, finishes college. We don't keep up with him. It's like 2 years later. His dad comes to my counter where he's buying some product. Run into him. Hey, how's Aaron doing? He says, well, it's 10 o'clock. I think he's probably up by now. He's in the basement of my house on the computer, probably playing a video game. I'm like, what do you mean? He graduated from college. He goes, well, he got a degree in video games, like how to build video games. He says, but he lives in Michigan and he doesn't want to move. And guess what? There's none of in Michigan, companies that build video games. So he kind of got himself in a little bit of a pickle, right? And I'm like, oh man, you bring him in here. Just tell him he's got a job. I want him here as soon as he can. And sure enough, the dad went home, sent him in the next day. He's like, hey, I'm here to work. I'm like, great. And he's been with us ever since. It's probably been like 10 years now. He's probably one of the best programmers in the country with the type of stuff we do. And he had a video game degree. So here's my point to y'all. The untraditional people, while maybe not per the job description you have, there's so many people out there in the computer world, in the digital world, that are struggling to find their place. We as an industry, that's low-hanging fruit. We got to grab those people and bring them in. You know, we do some cool stuff too. It's, you know, I know video games are cool, but what if the video game could actually blow a building up? Wouldn't that be cool? No, I'm kidding. But you know what I mean? I mean, we got kind of a cool industry, because if you think about it from a digital perspective, we're the industry that's taken that, one of the industries, we're taking the digital technology, we're affecting the physical universe with it. And to some people like myself, that's mind-blowing. And same with a lot of young people, I think. So again, non-traditional people can come into our industry and have a huge impact, so. Okay, we got any other questions in the audience or comments? Anybody have any good tips for the rest of you in terms of how to recruit and retain good talent with these young people? Any tips? Sure.
So there's not, like, you asked for, you know, groups and things. I think that, like Scott mentioned, there's not any, like, one group, but I've had a lot of luck hiring people from, with a computer science background or IT background from DICE, but I end up sourcing resumes from there. So I go looking for candidates, because I'm not going to get as many people coming to me and saying, oh, what is this industry? They don't know what it is. So to them, it sounds a little weird. So if you reach out to somebody and say, oh, I like your resume, here's a job posting, might be interested, let's just have a conversation about it. I have had so much luck that way. I have hired 4 people, you know, recently in IT group that we have with our developers, just by finding them myself. It takes a lot more work. It is time consuming, but nobody knows what the BAS industry is unless you're in it. So it's really, you have to be the advocate for the industry. You have to, you know, find a sexy message to say, hey, we're cool. And we've been really successful doing it that way.
Yep.
So it sounds like you've been using a pretty standardized hiring process, probably set questions that have been vetted, right? Would you say that you have like some particular questions that aim at finding those types of self-driven candidates that you're looking for, or can you point me toward a resource for those types of vetted questions, especially if they appeal to our industry?
Timmy, you got any good ones for that?
I would think my recommendation would be to go take a look at the software company that's closest to doing what you're doing, and take a look at how they're writing some of their job descriptions. They're having to motivate these people and attract them. And from the Cortec thing, we got to see a little bit of insight into, like, Google. When you go out to California, the campus environment, and just that whole thing of showing them where they're going to work or where they're not going to work, the idea of having the pods and stuff. So some of these words that the software people, if you're in fact, your company is flexible enough that you can do that. If you're trying to hire them to work in a cubicle, it's a tough sell. But if you're actually having all the freedom to basically, treat them as they would if they were coming into a Google campus or I was going to use Apple, but that'd be a bad example because they built that giant building and nobody will move into it. So that's not good. But yeah, so the campus, the software campuses, I think have done some pretty interesting stuff. Free food, all kinds of things are in their ads.
I mean, I can't say that we've got any specific questions in our case that we ask, but something that we've started to do as part of the interview process is to give a problem, and not that we're looking for any specific answer to it, but it gives the candidates an opportunity to kind of demonstrate their problem-solving ability and their thought process, or lack thereof, right? And we get to see very quickly, are people able to apply logic and to work through a problem, and because everything we do is kind of at some level sort of problem solving, exercising good judgment. So those are the sorts of things we want to see. I mean, there's no specific knowledge that we're looking for, but it's kind of that innate, do you know how to tackle a problem? And so that's something we're starting to do, and I think so far it seems like it's working pretty well. And the other question I've always asked is, what motivates you? Why are you here? Why do you care? What gets
gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, what is your passion? And I find some people don't have much of an answer to that, and some people do. And people that do have a good answer to that are usually the ones that we want to hire.
Well, at the risk of keep
Talking till everybody leaves the room, I think it is time.
It is. Thank you all for coming.